Okay, so Facebook is censoring this one as well. Guys, go to the videos, look at them on your laptop or PCs, record them with your phone and put them out there. It goes around the binary code for a moment. If you share a link, the link is just going to be tagged. So that's how I'm able to get some of these out there. Sneaky, but hey, whatever we got to do to get the information out. So here we go. Listen.
The election software blamed for what some humorists in Pennsylvania call glitches, and in Michigan and Georgia, those glitches were, it appears, programmed.
Intentional.
Software used in not just a few states, in 28 states.
28?
In this election. The software is in the voting machines
Look at that.
of a company called Dominion Voting Systems. It is the largest voting company in this country, and quite a few problems occurred. In addition to the 28 states in which they operate, the company boasts that its customers include 9 of the top 20 counties in the United States. In Antrim County, Michigan, the software initially awarded thousands of votes to Joe Biden that were meant for President Trump. There, we're told, was corrected, and the county flipped in favor of the president by 2,500 votes. My. Georgia's Gwinnett County and suburban Atlanta also faced a day-long delay in reporting their votes Friday because of a, quote, technical issue with Dominion. And this appears to be the type of thing Joe Biden might have had in mind when he hailed his voter fraud apparatus last month.
And we all saw this.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Yes, you heard it right. Amazing. And joining us now, Tom Fenton. He's the president of Judicial Watch, and I want to begin
These
with
guys are all over.
The former vice president, who has been gleefully, at least responding to the term president.
I think you get the point.
Elect,
Share.
Among several key swing states, evidence of supposed glitches in vote-counting software have emerged following the election and in recent days. The Trump campaign and other right-wing groups speculate these glitches transferred votes meant for President Trump over to Democrat nominee Joe Biden. Major media outlets reported that these allegations are false. On CNN, officials from Wisconsin and Michigan said they do not believe anything wrong occurred in their state's elections.
What we've got to talk about really is to leave the conspiracy theories behind.
This election was smooth, secure, transparent, and accurate.
Fluctuations in the voting numbers reported on election night can indicate otherwise. According to a Twitter post from a data scientist, Michigan counted almost 150,000 votes within 5 seconds, and less than 6,000 of them were for Trump. And Virginia's vote count was reduced by over 100,000 votes in the early hours of the morning. The data scientist also told us she found Wisconsin had an average count of 325 votes per second, while Washington hit a peak of over 130,000 vote counts per second. And in one video, what looks to be CNN's 2020 election coverage showed 20,000 votes in Pennsylvania being transferred from Trump to Biden. Other reported glitches have caused separate issues. Wisconsin election workers had to duplicate over 13,000 ballots because of a printing error, which meant every ballot had to be opened and read.
The president continued to rail against Dominion voting systems, the software used in several of the states where Biden is leading. The firm denies that its software and devices are not secure. But experts, politicians, and some media questioned the reliability of Dominion voting systems machines prior to the election.
A lawyer for the Trump campaign says they're receiving lots of evidence about voter fraud and irregularities. She told Fox Business on Sunday they're getting ready to overturn election results in multiple states. Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell says she has enough evidence of election fraud to launch a widespread criminal investigation. She told Fox Business on Sunday that election software switched millions of votes from President Trump to Joe Biden. She says a whistleblower has come forward claiming the software was designed to rig elections and that he saw it happen in other countries. She said they can stick a thumb drive in the machine, they can upload software to it even from the internet, from Germany or Venezuela even, and they can shift votes in real time. And she says they have the algorithm they used to do it. Powell also said they found unexplainable voting irregularities in states that officials believe had valid systems. In the interview, Powell suggested that Dominion Voting Systems also operates the Smartmatic software, and that it's the software that's the problem. She says she's concerned it was used by other election machines too. Smartmatic denies it has ties to Dominion, and Dominion denies allegations that its machines changed votes from Trump to Biden.
Good evening and welcome to Beyond the Noise. I'm David Zhang. Tonight, massive evidence against Dominion voting software and its company. Ties are being revealed. According to this tweet, Dominion apparently deleted 2.7 million votes nationwide from Trump. On November 11th, an individual by the handle of Truman Black wrote a script that exposes the voting switches from Trump to Biden. This gained many news outlets' attention. He posted an entire list of all the states who employ the Dominion system. In total, about 500,000 votes were taken from Trump and switched to Biden. Keep in mind, these calculations are not yet verified. However, he did obtain the data from Edison Research, which is used by at least ABC, CBS, CNN, and NBC News, among others. From there, the company's background and strong ties to the Democratic Party was exposed through various media reports. Now, more than one internal employee has come out to expose the voter fraud scheme. Dominion released a statement stating that they have no ties to any Democratic Party senior levels, or that they were involved in any voting fraud. But are they really that innocent? Let's take a look at what their first ties is, which is to the Democratic Party. According to the different sources, the company is heavily involved with Nancy Pelosi, former President Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton. And during an interview with Trump lawyer Sidney Powell, Fox News host Maria Bartiromo mentioned that she had seen reports that California Senator Dianne Feinstein's husband, Richard Bloom, is a key shareholder, and Nancy Pelosi's longtime chief of staff are key executives of Dominion voting system. They were also reported in 2019 by Bloomberg Government, a news website in April. Bloomberg Government said that the Pelosi's former chief of staff, Nadeem Al-Shami, is one of the lobbyists in Dominion. Al-Shami is from a lobbying firm called Brunstein, Farber, Hyatt, Schreck. Now, the ties with Barack Obama is a lot more complicated. According to Dominion's website, in July of 2018, a company called Staple Street Capitals, SSC, which is a private equity firm, acquired Dominion Voting. On SSC's website, one of their shareholders has a key name, William Kennard. Kennard was the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC chair during Clinton's era. He was also the U.S. ambassador to EU during Obama's era. He was also a policy advisor for the former Secretary of State John Kerry and the Carlyle Group's managing director, another private equity firm. Even now, Kennard is still a member of the executive board at AT&T and Ford, and AT&T owns CNN. So Kennard is involved in media, business, and politics, who has important relationships with the higher-ups of the members of the Democratic Party. Now with Clinton, the Dominion ties don't end there. According to OAN, Dominion's communication manager, Penelope Chester Starr, used to work in the Clinton's foundation. She also was the vice president of Teneo. So Teneo is a company that one of their main duty is organizing Hillary Clinton's overseas ventures, including organizing her speeches and such. On Clinton Foundation's website, as early as 2014, Dominion promised to give money to one of the foundation's plans. And that plan was to provide newly formed democratic societies around the world voting machines and voting technologies. Dominion's ties to Democrats are also reflected in its employees' donations to the party. According to conservative media, the National Pulse, 96% of its employees' contribution goes to Democrat candidates. These employees are involved in the entire process of software development, web engineering, production, and management. Whereas in the last 6 years, Dominion has only provided Republican candidates a total of $86.25. Now compare this to Twitter and Facebook, where the Media Research Center reported their donations to the Democratic Party being 98.99% and 91.68%, respectively. Just as this alone, we see a deep connection. Now, the second tied are with the Chinese Communist Party. This January, the CEO and co-founder of Dominion, John Poulos, said during his statement to Congress and admitting that their products included parts from China, including LCD touchscreens, control boards, and AI processors, and more, because the US did not choose to produce these things. In December of 2019, supply chain surveillance company Interos published a report indicating that the current voting system used in the US, 1/5 of its parts come from Chinese suppliers. In Dominion systems, about 59% of the parts come from companies that have businesses in Russia and in China. In fact, the law firm that stopped representing Trump in his legal battle in Pennsylvania's voter fraud situation, Porter Wright, had a lawyer by the name of Sunny Young, who worked at the Pennsylvania office. She said in her bio that she represents the Chinese entities in U.S. businesses. Young also spoke at many CCP-related law events in China and was praised for her efforts by the government. The firm also appears to have helped facilitate and outsource jobs to China by representing a U.S. company in negotiating certain investment agreements and supplier agreements with Chinese manufacturers. So they would represent Chinese companies and not represent President Trump. On that note, Trump revealed on Thursday that they're banning any American companies from investing in Chinese companies with ties to the military of China. According to this order, starting on January 11th of 2021, American investors can no longer purchase stocks from at least 31 Chinese companies. These companies were monitored earlier this year by the Defense Department as the CCP military supported companies. What does this list of 31 companies entail? China Telecom, China Mobile, Huawei, Huaycong, China Air Industry, China Railroad Construction Corporation, China Ship Corporation, Panda Tech, and so forth. So, because if you want to be successful to run your business in China, you need connections in the military. Now let's go back to what it means to have ties with the Dominion voting company. There is a defect in the system of the Dominion software. Trump's lawyer Powell thinks that the defect was intentional because they have parts from China, and the CCP has the strongest evidence to interfere with American elections. There's a possibility that there is ties to sway the US election. Now the third point is that we are all curious about voting frauds taking place in the Dominion system, which was revealed by whistleblowers and many calculations from experts. Melissa Carone, a contracted worker at the company, came out and said that she was sent to Detroit to provide tech support for the systems. What she saw was a large number of poll walkers would repeatedly scan the same ballots 4 or 5 times. And she also saw workers fill in ballots and make fake signatures. When Carone told her superior, the response was that it was not our duty to watch poll workers, but to provide tech support. We had previously mentioned that Dr. Shiva Ayadurai, who worked on investigating ballot switches in Michigan, found a huge number of ballots switched from Trump to Biden. Sidney Powell actually thinks that voting fraud did not just happen with this election. She thinks that in 2016, Bernie Sanders lost the election to Hillary Clinton may possibly be due to internal fraud. Is there any truth to her thinking? I think there is. In fact, on the Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren's website, she and other federal lawmakers had investigated vulnerabilities in voting systems, including Dominion back in 2019. According to their finding, the companies making vote machines have long skimped on security and in favor of convenience. According to another Democrat, former governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich, said during his Newsmax interview that fraudulent voting has occurred in Democrat-controlled cities for a very long time. When he tried to change it, he got removed from power. He said that this is a large systemic cheating scheme. If you thought that it was hard to believe there has been such a large fraud that took place this year, it is because they have never been caught doing it for so long. This election, they thought with just software cheating that they could have beaten Trump. But little did they realize how many votes Trump would receive on election day. The gain was such a large lead that just voting fraud softwares couldn't cover it. So they had to stop counting ballots after midnight in many states so that they could bring in large amounts of mail-in ballots to cover the difference between Trump and Biden. And with that, I shall end this video.
As he's gotten more evidence of the rigging that went on, he's really outraged. And I am too. I mean, it's way beyond what people think, including a very, very dangerous foreign company that did the votes in 27 states, a company that's not American, a company that's foreign, a company that has close ties with Venezuela and therefore China, and uses Venezuelan company software that's been used to steal elections in other countries. I mean, I don't think people have any idea of the dimension of the national security problem that Dominion creates. This Dominion company is a radical left company. One of the people there is a big supporter of Antifa and has written horrible things about the president for the last 3 or 4 years. And the software that they use is done by a company called Smartmatic. It's a company that was founded by Chavez and by Chavez's two allies who still own it. It's been used to cheat in elections in South America. It was banned by the United States about a decade ago. It's come back now as a subcontractor to other companies. It sort of hides in the weeds. But Dominion sends everything to Smartmatic. Can you believe it? Our votes are sent overseas. They're sent to someplace else, some other country. Why do they leave our country?
Yeah.
And this company has tried and true methods for fixing elections, like calling a halt to the voting when you're running too far behind. They've done that in prior elections. Now, what happened on election night? He was ahead by 800,000 votes in Pennsylvania. Impossible to catch up, unless you're cheating. And same thing in Michigan, Wisconsin. He was ahead in all those states by numbers that in prior times, and I can show this to you, networks would have called for him, but they didn't call it for him. I mean, we were ahead in those states, and there was so little to like, for example, 800,000 ahead in Pennsylvania, 64% of the vote cast. He was outpolling every projection possible. So right down to the rigged polls before, this is another attempt to try to defeat him by illegal means. It's no different than the impeachment. It's done by largely the same people who were involved in it. One of the chairman of Smartmatic is a close business associate of George Soros. I have to tell you more. Finally, you want to get down to the votes, let's just pick Pennsylvania. We have identified 632,000 illegal votes. 632,000. It's enough to have the president win the state by 300,000, which is actually what he won it by, right? If you get that Smartmatic machine out and you allow us, I mean, this is unprecedented. They're counting mail-in ballots. And they don't allow any Republican to inspect. That is illegal, unlawful, against the law. I don't know how else to put it. Never happened. I've done many absentee ballot elections. There's a Republican on one side, a Democrat on the other. No. The Republican was outside getting pushed around by goons. When they finally get in, they're 20 feet away and they're told to use binoculars. Binoculars, the only way you can tell whether a mail-in ballot is valid is by examining the outer envelope. The minute you remove the outer envelope, it's gone. You can no longer validate it. And that's why, under the law of every state, if you don't inspect it, the vote is invalid. There are cases, including in Pennsylvania, that have been overturned for just a few ballots that were handled that way. We can prove that 632,000 ballots were handled that way, particularly in Philadelphia. And if you tell me that Philadelphia doesn't cheat in elections, I will tell you you're living on Mars. I mean, and there is a Mars in Pennsylvania, by the way. But I mean, the reality is that I would be surprised if Philadelphia didn't cheat in this election. They've done it in the last 60 years. Now we move on to Detroit. In Detroit, we have evidence that 100,000 ballots were brought in at 4:30 in the morning and counted. And to the extent that our witnesses, and there are 4 of them, saw it, and one of them is an ex-employee of Dominion, according to them, every single ballot was for Biden. And not only that, whatever ballots they could see, because these weren't Republicans, so they could get closer. Every ballot they could see, it just had Biden's name on it. Nobody else, not even another Democrat. Now, why does that happen? It happens because you know you're behind, Dominion notifies you, you call off the counting, and then you start doing ballots like this. You can't do the down ticket. That's why you have Biden and no down ticket, because they just had enough time to get Biden's name in. We never got a chance to inspect a single one of those. Okay, I got my piece out.
Will you be able to prove this, Rudy? Look, I want to show this graphic of the swing states that were using Dominion and this software, the Smartmatic software. I mean, you just said it all. This is a Smartmatic, a Delaware entity registered in Boca Raton, Florida. Activities in Caracas, Venezuela. The voting machines were used. Dominion voting machines were used in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And I have a graphic showing the states where they stopped counting, which I thought was also strange to stop counting in the middle of election night. One source says that the key point to understand is that the Smartmatic system has a back door that allows it to be, that allows the votes to be mirrored and monitored, allowing an intervening party a real-time understanding of how many votes will be needed to gain an electoral advantage. Are you saying the states that use that software did that?
Well, I know I can prove that they did it in Michigan. I can prove it with witnesses. We're investigating the rest. In every one of those states, though, we have more than enough illegal ballots already documented to overturn the result in that state. Because not only did they use a Venezuelan company to count our ballots, which almost should be illegal per se. Number two, they didn't allow Republicans in key places to observe the mail vote. That makes the mail vote completely invalid. Now, they didn't do it everywhere. They did it in big cities where they have corrupt machines that will protect them, meaning in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, in Detroit. They didn't have to do it in Chicago, in New York, or Boston. They could have. They have corrupt machines there. They did it absolutely in Phoenix, Arizona. They did it absolutely in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Republicans were shut out from enough of the count so they could accomplish what Smartmatic wanted to do. And that pattern that you have there, we have evidence that that's the same pattern Smartmatic used in other elections in which they were disqualified. In other words, this is their pattern of activity. And yes, there is a backdoor, and we actually have proof of some of the connections to it. Right now, our cases are the most developed in Pennsylvania and in Michigan. But we already have enough affidavits from people who were pushed out of being able to observe. So in each one of the states that he lost narrowly, he won those states probably by 2-3%. I mean, it's
Rudy,
a terrible, terrible thing that happened
before we go. Do you have the Dominion hardware in your possession? Do you need to have that hardware in your possession to prove it? Can you prove the case without the hardware or the software?
We have people that I can't really disclose that can describe the hardware in great detail. We have some of the people, former government employees, our government employees and others that were there at the creation of Smartmatic. They can describe it, they can draw it, they can show it. And then we have proof that I can't disclose yet. But I'm confident that...
Yeah.
That,
go ahead.
And this has to be examined, Maria, beyond this election, which I believe will get overturned. But beyond this election, this whole thing has to be investigated as a national security matter. And the governors who gave contracts to this company never bothered to do any due diligence. I mean, I can't imagine you would give a contract to a company if you went one step further and found out it's really being run by people that are close to Maduro and Chavez. I can't imagine you would do that unless you're out of your mind.
So you only have a few weeks, Rudy, because they want to certify the state elections early December. Do you believe you will be able to prosecute and be heard within this time frame?
Of course. And I can't imagine how a state legislature can certify based upon ballots where we had no opportunity to inspect, and it was done deliberately. I mean, the fact that it happened in all those states, right, tells you it was a plan. The crooked Democratic leaders in those 10 or 12 places where we were shut out didn't all develop that idea by themselves, right? They didn't have the same dream that night. This is a plan. This is maybe the plan Joe Biden was talking about. He's got the best voter fraud plan in the world. Well, he has a really good one, but lucky we caught it.
Wow. All right, Rudy, we're going to be following your investigation. Thank you very much for breaking all of this news on this program this morning.
Please, you may be the only one following it, because we're also enduring a lot of censorship, a lot, almost complete, like we're not in America.
Unbelievable. Rudy Giuliani, we'll keep on it. Promise you
tragic.
that. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
We will see you soon.
Thank you.
Rudy Giuliani. Welcome back. According to public records, Dominion voting machines are used in 2,000 jurisdictions in 30 states. According to experts, if one site has a flaw, other sites are likely to as well, which is why Texas rejected using Dominion software 3 times, raising concerns that the system was not safe from fraudulent or unauthorized manipulation. That's troubling, given we already know that at least 2 software glitches in Georgia and Michigan occurred on election night. Attorney Sidney Powell is leading the charge against Dominion, and she says she has enough evidence of fraud to launch a massive criminal investigation. Sidney, thanks very much for being here. We appreciate your time this morning. I want to get right into it. We just heard about the software made by Smartmatic from Rudy, and I want to get your take on what you and I spoke about just a few minutes ago, and that is a gentleman named Peter Neffinger. Tell me how he fits into all of this.
Yes, well, he is listed as its former Admiral Peter Neffinger, or retired Admiral Peter Neffinger. He is president and on the board of directors of Smartmatic. And it just so happens he's on Mr. Biden's presidential transition team that's going to be non-existent because we're fixing to overturn the results of the election in multiple states. And President Trump won by not just hundreds of thousands of votes, but by millions of votes that were shifted by this software that was designed expressly for that purpose. We have sworn witness testimony of why the software was designed. It was designed to rig elections. He was fully briefed on it. He saw it happen in other countries. It was exported internationally for profit by the people that are behind Smartmatic and Dominion. They did this on purpose. It was calculated. They've done it before. We have evidence from 2016 in California. We have so much evidence, I feel like it's coming in through a fire hose.
Wow. So, Sidney, you feel that you will be able to prove this. Do you have the software in your possession? Do you have the hardware in your possession? How will you prove this, Sidney?
Well, I've got lots of ways to prove it, Maria, but I'm not going to tell on national TV what all we have. I just can't do that.
Okay, but you have a small time frame here. The elections are supposed to be certified in early December. Do you believe that you can present this to the courts and be successful within this just couple of weeks?
Well, let me put it this way. First of all, I never say anything I can't prove. Secondly, the evidence is coming in so fast, I can't even process it all. Millions of Americans have written, I would say by now, definitely hundreds of thousands have stepped forward with their different experiences of voter fraud. But this is a massive election fraud, and I'm very concerned it involved not only Dominion and its Smartmatic software, but that the software essentially was used by other election machines also. It's the software that was the problem. Even their own manual explains how votes can be wiped away. They can it's like drag and drop Trump votes to a separate folder and then delete that folder. It's absolutely brazen how people bought this system and why they bought this system. In fact, every state that bought Dominion for sure should have a criminal investigation, or at least a serious investigation of the officers in the states who bought the software. We've even got evidence of some kickbacks, essentially.
Kickbacks. I want to take a short break and come back on that. And I want to ask you about the kickbacks and who took kickbacks in which states. Sidney, stay with us. Quick break, and we've got more breaking news this morning from Sidney Powell. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are back with attorney Sidney Powell, who's part of President Trump's legal team. Sidney, before we went to the break, we talked about, you said that there may have been kickbacks to some people who accepted the Dominion software. Tell me what you mean.
Well, I mean, we are collecting evidence now from various whistleblowers that are aware of substantial sums of money being given to family members of state officials who bought this software. I mean, we're talking about $100 million packages for new voting machines suddenly in multiple states, and benefits ranging from financial benefits for family members to sort of what I would call election insurance. Because they know that they can win the election if they are using that software. It's really an insidious, corrupt system, and I can't tell you how livid I am with our government for not paying attention to complaints even brought by Democrats, Carolyn Maloney, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, over the last several years in written letters with expert reports and some documentation of how corrupt this software is, and nobody in our government has paid any attention to it, which makes me wonder how much the CIA has used it for its own benefit in different places, and why Gina Haspel is still there in the CIA is beyond my comprehension. She should be fired immediately.
Which governor or which government official accepted hundreds of millions of dollars in benefits for their family as they took on this software?
If I said hundreds of millions of dollars there, I misspoke. I don't know the exact amount of money yet. We are still collecting the evidence on that, but it's more than one.
Okay, so you can't say who you believe took kickbacks. What is the CIA's role? Why do you think Gina Haspel should be fired immediately? You're saying that the CIA is behind the Dominion or Smartmatic voting software as well?
Well, the CIA and the FBI and other government organizations have received multiple reports of wrongdoing and failures and vulnerabilities in this company's product. Their own manual, if you sat down and read it, would explain how and why no honest person would use this system. And it's not just Dominion. There are other companies in the voting machine business in this country, too, that may very well and are likely using the same software. We've detected voting irregularities that are inexplicable and align with these problems in other states that think they have valid systems. But the people who bought the Dominion system, for sure, knew exactly what they were getting. It should never have been installed anywhere. And we are going to show the public exactly how rotten the entire state is.
Now, I have spoken with a few whistleblowers myself this weekend, and one source who is an IT specialist told me that he knows the software and specifically advised people in Texas, officials in Texas, not to use it. And yet, he was overruled. He said that there was an unusual patch that was put into the software while it was live, and it's highly unusual to put a patch in there. Is that what you're referring to? Tell me how it's done and how these back doors work.
Okay, that's part of it. They can stick a thumb drive in the machine or upload software to it, even from the internet. They can do it from Germany or Venezuela even. They can remote access anything. They can watch votes in real time. They can shift votes in real time. We've identified mathematically the exact algorithm they used and plan to use from the beginning to modify the votes in this case to make sure Biden won. That's why he said he didn't need your votes now. He would need you later. He was right. I mean, in his demented state, he had no filter, and he was speaking the truth more than once, including when he said he had the largest voter fraud organization ever. Well, it's massive election fraud. It's going to undo the entire election. And they can do anything they want with the votes. They can have the machines not read the signature. They can have the machines not read the down ballot. They can make the machines read and catalog only the Biden votes. it's like drag and drop whatever you want, wherever you want, upload votes.
Yeah.
In fact, we've got math in Michigan and Pennsylvania, I think it is, that all of a sudden hundreds of thousands of votes at a 67% ratio for Biden, 23% for Trump were uploaded multiple times into the system.
And Sydney, you say you have an affidavit from someone who knows how this system works and was there with the planning of it. You believe you can prove this in court?
Oh yes, we have essentially a sworn statement from a witness who knew exactly how it worked from the beginning, why it was designed to work that way, and saw when things started shutting down and they started, stopped counting the votes here, that was the same play that had worked in other countries.
Wow, this is explosive, and we certainly will continue to follow it. Sydney, thank you so much for your work. We will be catching up with you soon. Thank you so much. We'll be watching.
Thank you,
Sydney
Maria.
Powell.
You can be assured Rudy and I will stay on it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, joining us tonight is Sidney Powell, a member of President Trump's legal team, General Flynn's defense attorney, a great American and prominent appellate lawyer. Great to have you with us, Sidney. Let's start with Dominion. A straight out disavowal of any claim of fraud against the company, its software or machines. Your reaction?
Well, I can hardly wait to put forth all the evidence we have collected on Dominion, starting with the fact it was created to produce altered voting results in Venezuela for Hugo Chavez, and then shipped internationally to manipulate votes for purchase in other countries, including this one. It was funded by money from Venezuela and Cuba, and China has a role in it also. So if you want to talk about foreign election interference, we certainly have it now. We have staggering statistical evidence. We have staggering testimony from witnesses, including one who was personally in briefings when all of this was discussed and planned, beginning with Hugo Chavez and how it was designed there, and then saw it happening in this country. As soon as the state shut down on election night and stopped counting, those are the states where the most egregious problems occurred. We also need to look at, and we're beginning to collect evidence on the financial interests of some of the governors and secretaries of state who actually bought into the Dominion systems, surprisingly enough. Hunter Biden type graft to line their own pockets by getting a voting machine in that would either make sure their election was successful or they got money for their family from it. Or they got money for their family from it.
Well, that's straightforward. It may take, you're going to have to be quick to go through and to produce that investigation and the results of it. The December deadlines are approaching for electors, and just as we saw in 2000 with Bush v. Gore, how critical are those deadlines, and how urgent does that make your investigation and discovery?
Well, for fraud this serious, I think even if the states are stupid enough to go ahead and certify the votes where we know the machines were operating and producing altered election results, if they're stupid enough to do that, then they will be set aside by the fraud also. I mean, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of votes. President Trump won this election in a landslide. It's going to be irrefutable, and patriots are coming forward every day, all day, faster than we can collect their information with testimony they're willing to give under oath about how their votes were stolen and how the machines operated. They were updated the night of the election, sometimes after the election. We've got statistical evidence that shows hundreds of thousands of votes being just put in and replicated. It's going to be, there needs to be a massive criminal investigation, and it's going to affect millions of voters and elections.
With these allegations, these charges, Is the FBI already carrying out an investigation of these voting companies where their servers are domiciled, and in at least 3 instances, we know they're in foreign countries? Tell us where the Justice Department is in all of this.
I wish I knew. I'm not on the inside, so I'm not privy to that information. I know that even Democratic senators and congresspeople for years have reported problems with this system to the FBI and to the government, and nobody's done a blooming thing about it. The people in the election security part of the Department of Homeland Security need to be fired yesterday. They're absolutely ridiculous. Of course, Chris Wray needs to be fired too, because the only FBI interview of any witness was to intimidate him and try to get him to change his truthful testimony 4 hours by an anti-Trump FBI agent. They still have politics infecting the FBI instead of just following the law. We are on the precipice of, this is essentially a new American revolution. And anybody who wants this country to remain free needs to step up right now. These are federal felonies. Altering a vote or changing a ballot is a federal felony. People need to come forward now and get on the right side of this issue and report the fraud they know existed in Dominion voting systems, because that's what it was created to do. It was its sole original purpose. It has been used all over the world to defy the will of people who wanted freedom.
Sydney, at the outset of this broadcast, I said that this is the culmination of what has been over a 4-year effort to overthrow this president, to first deny his candidacy, the election, but then to overthrow his presidency. This looks like the effort to carry out an end game in the effort against him. Do you concur?
Oh, absolutely. And it's been organized and conducted with the help of Silicon Valley people, the big tech companies, the social media companies, and even the media companies. And I'm going to release the Kraken.
Well, good, because this is an extraordinary and such a dangerous moment in our history. I really am very concerned for the country. I am very concerned for all Americans. And I have a feeling that most Democrats are first Americans and not Democrats. They have to be as alarmed as any one of us. Cindy, we're glad that you are on the charge to straighten out all of this. It is a foul mess, and it is far more sinister than any of us could have imagined, even over the course of the past 4 years. You get the last word, Sydney.
It is indeed a very foul mess. It is farther and wider and deeper than we ever thought, but we are going to go after it, and I am going to expose every one of them.
Sidney Powell, thanks for being with us, and thanks for all that you're doing. We appreciate it. A great American.
Good morning, folks. It is Tuesday, October 20th. Last night I had the completeness of a dream that I've had over the last several days. It started about the 17th or 18th of October. This one got my attention, especially since we're so close to the election. The second part is a little bit more contentious. I've sent it to 2 of my friends to look at. Once again, I'm not going to try to interpret what these dreams are. I'm just telling you what I had. I felt the urgency to get them out this morning. So here's what it is. I saw what looked like an atlas with an interstate lines all over the nation. Like if you're looking down at an atlas and you see the interstate lines going all over from state to state, and they were flashing with bits of information going all over. It looked like a data map. It appeared to be like a network of sorts that was obviously overworked, and some of the data points were not flashing. Some were places, cities, smaller places. You had flashing, you had things that were moving, you had data points that were moving almost like traffic. But I could see there were small workers in white lab coats, and they were trying to work on the areas where the data was not flashing. I saw hammers, I saw guys with laptops, I saw people who were trying to work out the minute details of why this point wasn't flashing or why this point was flashing too hard or too fast. And I could see the areas heating up. I heard concerns that the circuits were going to go hot. That's what they said. Those circuits are going to go hot, and if they go hot, they will fry. And so that was the language I was hearing. And they said they're going to go hot and get fried if they could not slow the system down. And suddenly from the West Coast of the Midwest, and it started Washington State, Oregon, California, there were these big flashes. And then I saw smoke from the data points that seemed to represent those bigger cities. And they stopped on the western side of the Mississippi. So it started all the way on the West Coast, went to the West Coast, or to the western edge of the Mississippi River. I was not seeing explosions. I was not seeing bombs. I was seeing like systems shutting down because they were so hot. And as the data points, the flashing got closer to the bigger place, the bigger cities, it got faster and faster and faster. And almost in the background in my dream, I could hear that like a warning sign that happens in a laboratory or something like that. And the lab coat guys, they were working feverishly to fix these, but they couldn't get the system back online. So instead, they were trying to reroute. I could hear them saying, reroute that system, go around this city. I heard them say several times, go around Reno, go around Reno, go around Reno, get through Vegas, go here, go there. And they were trying to reroute the system to bring whatever the system was back to life. But as they were doing it and rerouting it, the bigger cities were still sending up smoke clouds. It was like you would see in the old Western movies where the cloud, like someone had like a Native American Indian with a blanket or something going over it. It was almost like the data points were sending up information about what had happened there. I did not see Native American Indians. I did not see anything like that or people doing the smoke cloud. But it looked as if there was something interrupting the smoke as it was coming up, almost like it was sending out a signal of information. And then there was a countdown clock. There was no countdown clock at first, but now on the other side of the Mississippi River, there was a countdown clock, and it was counting down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when it reached 1, the eastern side of the Midwest started having the same flash points, and the cities there began to smoke, and the circuits were fried. And I could hear those guys yelling, the system's going up, it's going up, it's going up. And then they would scream, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down. Circuits are going to fry, the circuits are going to fry, and then there would be these flash points, and you would see the smoke. But when the flashes reached Philadelphia, and this was specifically the city that I saw where all this was happening, was Philadelphia, the network line that was red, it looked like a fire hose that was pulsating with like LED lights inside of it. But when it got to Philadelphia, the network line was red, flashing, went into where the Liberty Bell was sitting. It went underneath the Liberty Bell. And when the pressure began to build up, and it was like watching water in a fire hose, it just filled it up, filled it up, filled it up, came underneath the Liberty Bell. And when it got underneath the Liberty Bell, it blew up, and the Liberty Bell went flying straight up in the air. And it split in half. The bell split in the middle of the air. It blew through the Liberty Bell up into the air like this, and then the Liberty Bell split in half, and it fell in such a way that the round area landed on the ground, and it was rotating. It was like going back and forth, just wobbling back and forth. It didn't land on the flat edge of the bell. It had been cracked in half. Once again, it fell, and the crack was where it had split through the whole thing. So the crack became what split the whole thing in half. It stopped rocking after what seemed like in the dream several minutes of just rocking back and forth like this. And then the Liberty Bell began to melt. It was almost as if a huge heat source, or from the data point that fire hose was so hot that it was melting now. So the Liberty Bell began to melt, and like heat was being applied. And then I saw that the lines of data were all headed towards Washington, D.C. from there. And it looked like the city had these octopus arms, and they were trying to fight to disconnect the data lines. And what I assumed was they were trying to keep the explosive power of the system shutting down from hitting Washington, D.C. And so these octopus arms came out, and they were trying to disconnect the systems. And then, but there was one that just kept flashing, kept building up pulses. It seemed bigger and more extreme, carrying more data, more information than the other lines I'd seen in the interstate area before. Though there were people wearing suits and ties, this was business attire, I saw justice. It was not necessarily Supreme Court justice. I did not see faces, but I saw judges. I saw people in suit and tie, business attire, professional business, and they were trying to basically pull this line out of Washington, D.C. to keep it from blowing up or whatever. They were trying to pull this line away from the city. without avail, to no avail. This thing kept going. It finally blew up because all the connections went to the Capitol building. That's exactly where it was going, to the Capitol building. It finally blew up, and the building literally cracked in half. So I'd seen the Liberty Bell crack in half, and now I saw the Capitol building crack in half. And it issues this huge smoke cloud. And as the smoke goes into the air, it creates a word. And that word was discovery. Discovery was the word that was in the air. So you got the halls of Congress cracked in half. You've got the smoke just billowing up, and it's spelling this word out in the sky, which is the word discovery. It's not like smoke that's dissipating or clouds. It stays there in the sky. And there are people that they're running now. And they're not running from the explosion. They're running from the word they see in the sky, which was discovery. Then the scene changed, and I saw a rotunda of the Capitol, and there was a closed casket in the middle of the rotunda. And the sign on the casket stated that inside was the Democratic candidate for the office of president. And there was a calendar hanging above that casket, and it had the date. Specifically, clearly I saw it. One of the first times I've seen an actual date, not on a calendar, but on the paper, it said December 17th. That date was clearly spelled out. And I'm not going to say someone's going to die on the 17th. I don't know what to say about it. I'm just telling you what I saw. That's all I'm doing. But it said, the calendar hanging above the casket, the sign had December 17th circled. Now, one of the sons of the Democratic presidential candidate was there, but not the other. And his wife was there, and she was looking down at the ground. Nobody was crying. Nobody was crying. There were also many congressmen and senators from both parties in the room, and they all had their heads down looking at the floor, and they were shaking them just violently, just making fists and shaking their heads violently. Also, all their shoes were not on their feet. The shoes were piled, like when you walk in the rotunda area. All the shoes were piled there. So all these congressmen, all these senators were basically barefooted. There was a couple of the females that had socks or stockings on their feet, almost like a pantyhose type stocking on their feet. Everybody else was totally barefoot. And then a prominent senator stood up and demanded to see the body. And that's when the sergeant at arms rushed up, and he said, with several Marines, by the way, and he said, there will be no viewing of the body today or ever again. There will be no viewing of the body today or ever again. And the senator sat down and collected himself. Then he walked over to that pile of shoes, and he dug through all these shoes until he found his pair. He put them on, and he sat there for a minute, looked around. You could tell he was getting angry, and he rushed out of the room. And he was running like at a sprinter's pace to get out of there. Smoke was still rising outside, and he's running towards the White House with both fists clenched like this. And his mouth is moving, and I did not hear the words, but I could see that he was cursing. Not like swearing, like cussing. He was cursing the White House. He was cursing the leadership. He was cursing the leadership. I don't want to put words out there because I did not hear what he was saying, but he was obviously cursing. He was upset with something that was going on. He was intent on making a change. And he stopped for a moment near the Washington Monument. And he looked back. And when you look back, there was about 20 to 25 other people who were following him. Men and women. I can't tell you parties. I can't tell you who they were. I did not see these faces. The runner, yes, I knew who it was. I'm not going to say, but nonetheless. 20, 25 people are following after him, but they're holding their shoes in their hand while they walked. He told them to hurry, but they just continued their very steady, almost cautious pace to get to him. And then he sneers at them, and he sneers at the White House, and he begins sprinting towards the White House as fast as he can. And at this time, I saw the man I'd seen in the previous dreams. He was standing in the place where the president gives the State of the Union address. He was standing in the halls of Congress right there where everybody sees the president give the State of the Union address every single year. And he tapped the microphone. It was one of those real thin, it wasn't a Shure SM58. It was a real thin, very professional microphone that was there. He tapped the microphone 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then he stated in a very loud voice, "A house divided against itself shall not stand." And he emphasized the word shall. He said it like this: "A house divided against itself shall not stand." and the emphasis was on the word shall. And then he pushed the microphone down, just put his hand and pushed the microphone all the way down to the podium, and he walked to the door at the rear of the room. And on that wall, there was a panel of probably 25 or 30 light switches, just your flip switch. And one by one, he flipped them down, one by one, until every light in Congress, in that building, in that room, went out. And that was the end of the dream. So I had this dream over the course of the last 3 or 4 nights. I've not slept since about 3 o'clock. I had it at about 2:15, I think around 2:15 to 2:30. Woke up with an incredible urgency to get this out there. Once again, I'm not going to say all the things I think it means. I think we're about to see a whole lot revealed in Congress. I think the next 2 weeks we're going to see a whole lot more revealed about some of our leaders on both sides. But whatever I saw with the data points, there are explosive things that are happening. That was not cities blowing up. That was information. That was data points. That was systems that were crashing. And so I'm sharing this, asking you to pray about it, pray for wisdom, understanding. Every time I put a dream out there, I usually get, and this is no joke, I usually get 300 to 400 people will try to interpret and tell me what the dream is. And that's okay. I can't look at all of them, and I don't look at all of them. But all I'm telling you is I think, we're 2 weeks today from the election, and there's a whole lot going on, definitely in this dream. And the dreams I've had lately have been a lot more political, a lot more situations. I'm also not saying that Joe Biden's going to die on December 17th. I'm just telling you, I saw a closed casket. I saw a sign that said this is the Democratic president for president, or the Democratic candidate for president. I saw his wife and one of the sons, not two. And that's all I'm saying. We are seeing some of the things I've seen in the dreams that are happening, and I'm not trying to just clarify that and say, hey, I'm doing these. I keep telling these dreams so that there's some value added to what I've said or done. I'm just trying to be obedient and share what I've seen. You can do with them what you want, but I am trying to warn the nation. I'm trying to warn the church that I believe there's some pretty explosive things that are coming, and that we better be where we need to be. Number one, with the Lord, and secondly, be prepared with our families to protect, to watch, to lead, to guide, and to speak up right now. I think this is going to be the most important election and the most contentious election in not just modern history, but in the history of this nation. And I believe, I think I'm qualified to say that based on the news, the reports of things that are happening, the number of attorneys on both sides. So take this, do with it what you want. But this is the dream that I've had last night. This is the dream that will be on my mind for the next several hours, the next several days going into the election. And so please pray. Because the spokesman that was standing where the president gives the State of the Union said, a house divided against itself shall not stand. And if we've ever been divided as a nation, it is today. I don't think we have to go back to the Civil War to find the kind of divisions that we have like we have today. And the division is a very, very spiritual one. It's the difference between right and wrong, good and evil. That's what we see out there. It's not black and white. That's not the biggest issue that we have in this country. There's a spiritual issue that is deeply underneath the foundation of this country, and things are about to become explosive and violent and issue oriented. But I think also what I'll just say this. I think God's about to punch the November calendar. The more I pray about it, the more I see, I think God's about to say enough is enough in this nation. And we'll see how the rest of my dreams play out. But I'm just telling you what I saw today, and ask you to pray about it, ask you to make sure you're right with the Lord, ask you to share your faith with as many people as you can. Get out and vote, get out and make a difference, but also prepare for the things that could happen in the next several weeks. We are 2 weeks today from the election, and things are not slowing down by any means. So take this and do with it what you will. Thanks for listening.